The sound of champagne glasses clinking filled the grand ballroom, and for a moment, I believed I was living inside a dream. The chandeliers above cast a golden glow, the orchestra swelled, and my husband Daniel stood on stage, confident, polished, the CEO everyone admired. But in the next breath, my dream shattered. He extended his hand, not toward me, his wife of 12 years, but toward her. Melissa, his assistant. Her red dress clung to her like sin itself, and the way he pulled her close wasn't professional. It was intimate. Too intimate. "Everyone," Daniel announced with a smile so wide it cut me open, "tonight isn't just about our company's milestone. It's about celebrating someone who means the world to me." My stomach twisted. "Melissa," he said, voice dripping with affection, "thank you for standing by me through late nights, endless stress, and everything else. I couldn't have done it without you." Applause erupted. Cameras flashed, but I stood frozen, hands trembling, glass slipping through my fingers and shattering onto the marble floor. Heads turned, gasps echoed. Suddenly I wasn't the wife. I was the outsider, the fool. And then it happened. He kissed her. Right there, under the lights, in front of hundreds of people, as if I didn't exist. My breath caught in my throat, my vision blurred. The humiliation burned hotter than fire. I could feel their stares, whispers slicing me open. "Isn't that his wife? She looks destroyed. How pathetic." I wanted to scream, to tear the stage apart, but my body betrayed me. I stood there, exposed, shaking, my heart breaking in slow motion while Daniel, my Daniel, chose her in front of the world. And in that silence, I swore the sound of my soul cracking was louder than the applause. I stumbled backward, desperate to escape the sea of eyes. My heels clicked too loud against the marble, each step an echo of disgrace. My chest tightened, my throat closed. The ballroom felt suffocating, a cage filled with polished monsters feeding on my pain. But as I pushed through the crowd, someone stopped me. A man, tall, sharply dressed, with an expression I couldn't read. His gaze was steady, piercing, almost as if he had been waiting for this moment. He bent down silently, picked up something from the floor, and held it out to me. My wedding ring. I hadn't even realized it had slipped off when my hand shook earlier. "Be careful what you choose to let go of," he said quietly, his voice low enough for only me to hear. "Some things are worth more than you think." Before I could reply, he disappeared into the crowd like smoke. I stared at the ring in my palm, cold and heavy. For a second, I thought of holding on, forcing Daniel to remember who I was, what we had built. But then the memory of his lips on hers crashed down, and the decision snapped inside me like glass breaking. No, I wouldn't fight for scraps of dignity. I wouldn't beg. I slid the ring into my clutch, not to keep, not to wear, but because something in me whispered that this wasn't the end. The night wasn't just about betrayal, it was the beginning of something else. I thought I had lost everything, but they didn't know. Daniel, Melissa, the entire room, none of them knew that the truth hadn't even begun to surface. And when it did, regret would be the only word left on Daniel's lips. My name is Claire Donovan. I am 38 years old, and until that night, I thought I had everything. A husband who adored me, a daughter in middle school, a home that looked perfect on Christmas cards. But perfection is a cruel mask. It hides the rot underneath until it explodes in public. After the gala, I locked myself in our guest bedroom, unable to face Daniel. He didn't even come home that night. Maybe he stayed with her. Maybe he didn't care enough to notice I wasn't in our bed. Either way, the silence in the house was louder than his betrayal. I sat at the edge of the bed, still in my gown, mascara streaking down my cheeks. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Texts, missed calls, social media notifications. The pictures had already spread. Him and her, kissing under the chandelier, while I stood broken in the corner. My hands shook as I scrolled through the comments. She deserved it. Who still believes in loyalty these days? She looks like a ghost, poor woman. Melissa is so much younger. Honestly, Daniel traded up. The words sliced me open. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, but instead I clutched it like an anchor dragging me down. And then I saw her name. My daughter. A text at 11:45 p.m. "Mom, are you okay? People are saying things at school already. I don't know what to do." That broke me in a way Daniel's kiss hadn't. Because I wasn't just a betrayed wife. I was a mother. And if I crumbled completely, my daughter would have nothing to hold on to. I pressed my palms to my face, Choking on sobs I tried to silence. The truth is, I had given everything to Daniel. When we first met, I was a journalist, chasing stories, flying across states, living with a fire in my veins. I had dreams, publishing my own book, building a career. But when he asked me to marry him, when he promised to take care of me, I made a choice. I stepped back. I told myself love was worth the sacrifice. He needed me, I thought. His career was demanding, his hours long. He said he couldn't do it without me. So I became the perfect wife. I cooked, I cleaned, I raised our daughter. I attended his events with a smile that grew heavier each year. My world shrank until it revolved entirely around him. And now, he had replaced me with someone who reminded him of what I used to be. Young, ambitious, full of fire. I felt pathetic. Used, disposable. As I sat there drowning in shame, my mind flashed back to the man at the gala, the stranger who handed me my ring. His words echoed, "Be careful what you choose to let go of. Some things are worth more than you think." Why did he say that? Who was he? And why did his voice feel familiar, tugging at a memory buried deep? I tried to dismiss it, but I couldn't shake the image of his eyes, sharp, knowing, almost accusing. I hadn't told anyone this, but years ago, before Daniel, there was someone else. Someone I had walked away from because I thought Daniel was safer, more stable. I buried that part of my life, never mentioning it even to my closest friends. But the stranger's presence that night cracked something open. Was it him? Had fate circled back? Right when my world was collapsing, I didn't have answers. All I knew was that my life, once neat and predictable, had been split into before and after. Before the gala, I was Daniel's wife. After the gala, I wasn't sure who I was anymore. But maybe it was time to find out. Morning light spilled through the blinds, but it didn't feel like morning. It felt like a sentence being read aloud. By then, the story had spread everywhere. News outlets picked up the gala scandal, splashing Daniel's picture with Melissa across their screens. CEO's shocking public display, wife left humiliated. I couldn't step outside. Neighbors looked at me with pity. Parents whispered at the school drop-off. Even the grocery store cashier offered me a sad smile that made me want to scream. But humiliation wasn't the only weight pressing down on me. I began noticing the threads of control Daniel had woven around my life. Threads I had mistaken for protection. The house? His name on the deed. The cars? Leased through the company. The savings? Tied to accounts I didn't have full access to. Even my credit card, mine I thought, was linked to his company's account. I realized with a sickening jolt. If Daniel wanted to cut me off completely, he could. And with Melissa by his side, would he hesitate? I sat at the kitchen table that morning, staring at a cup of untouched coffee, my hands shaking. How had I been so blind? Later that day, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from Daniel's assistant. No, not assistant, not anymore. Melissa. "Claire," her voice was smooth, calculated, almost polite. "Daniel asked me to reach out. He thinks it would be best if you kept things quiet, for the sake of the company's reputation." My jaw clenched. Quiet? She sighed like she was dealing with a stubborn child. "The media already knows too much. If you go public, if you make a scene, it won't just hurt Daniel. It'll hurt your daughter, her school, her friends. Kids can be cruel." My heart dropped. The threat was sugar-coated, but it was clear. I didn't answer. I hung up. My fingers trembled so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Melissa wasn't just the other woman. She was stepping into my life, piece by piece, with Daniel's blessing. And I was being erased. That night, Daniel finally came home. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He poured himself a drink, loosened his tie, and spoke as if he was giving instructions to an employee. "Claire, this doesn't have to get ugly. We'll separate quietly, you'll have what you need, and life will move on." My chest tightened. "What about our daughter?" His eyes flickered just for a second, but then he smiled. A cold, business-like smile. "She'll be fine. Kids adjust. Besides, Melissa adores her." I wanted to hit him, to claw that smug expression off his face. Instead, I stood frozen, words dying in my throat. And then, as if twisting the knife, he added, "You've been out of the workforce for over a decade, Claire. Let's be realistic. You can't support yourself the way I can support you. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Every word stripped me down. He wasn't just cheating, he was reminding me that I had no power, no voice, no ground to stand on. And the worst part? He was right. That night, I opened the drawer of my nightstand and pulled out a leather-bound notebook. It was old, worn, filled with pieces of my past life, drafts of articles I never published, ideas for stories I never chased. I hadn't opened it in years. Flipping through the pages, I felt something stir inside me. A reminder of who I used to be, of the woman I had buried to become Daniel's wife. But mixed in with those pages was something else, a folded letter. My breath caught when I saw the handwriting. I knew it instantly. It wasn't Daniel's. It was his. The man from my past, the one I had walked away from before I married Daniel. My hands shook as I held the letter, unopened for years. I had hidden it away, telling myself it didn't matter. But now, after seeing that stranger at the gala, I wondered, had he come back? Had he been watching all along? The walls of my life were crumbling, but for the first time, a crack of light was seeping through. The first time Melissa set foot in my home after the gala, she didn't knock. She walked in as if she belonged, her heels clicking against the hardwood, her perfume filling the hallway. Daniel trailed behind her, not a hint of shame in his stride. I was in the kitchen, pretending to drink tea, though my hands shook so badly I could barely lift the cup. "Claire," Daniel said smoothly, "Melissa and I need to discuss some changes. It's easier if we do this here." Melissa smiled, that polished, poisonous smile. "I thought it was time we stopped being awkward around each other. After all, I'll be around more often now." My throat closed. Around. More often. In my house. Daniel set a folder on the counter, sliding it toward me. "These are preliminary separation terms. Nothing final, just a starting point. I've already looped in a lawyer." I stared at the papers. My name was barely there. Just a few lines about reasonable spousal support, nothing about shared assets, nothing about protection for my daughter. "You planned this," I whispered. Daniel didn't even flinch. "I planned for efficiency. Drawn-out divorces are messy, Claire. This is cleaner, for everyone." Melissa leaned casually against the counter, her manicured nails tapping the marble. "And honestly, Claire, it's better for your image too. Nobody wants to be the bitter ex-wife." Her words sliced deeper than Daniel's. Because she wasn't just the mistress, she was positioning herself as the replacement. 2 days later, I walked into what used to be our office, Daniel's home study, only to find Melissa sitting at his desk. She was flipping through files like she owned them. When she saw me, she didn't even look startled, she just smirked. "Oh, don't worry, Daniel asked me to help organize some of the paperwork. He's got so much on his plate." I clenched my fists. "This is my home." Melissa tilted her head, feigning innocence. "For now." That was the moment the humiliation burned into rage. My cheeks flushed, my voice rose before I could stop myself. "You think you can just walk in and erase me? You think you can take everything I built?" Her smirk widened. "Claire, sweet Claire, you didn't build it. Daniel did. You were just along for the ride." The words knocked the air from my lungs. I wanted to scream, to throw her out, to break every piece of glass in that room. But before I could, Daniel walked in, calm as ever. "What's going on?" Melissa slid smoothly into her role, eyes wide, voice trembling just enough. I was just helping Daniel, but Claire, she got upset. "I think she's struggling." Daniel looked at me like I was fragile, irrational, like I was the problem. And in that look, I saw it clearly. They had rehearsed this. This wasn't chaos, it was a strategy. That night, after they left me alone in the hollow shell of my house, I overheard them in the driveway, their voices carried through the open window. "It's working. She's breaking down. By the time the lawyers finalize it, she'll sign anything." "Daniel, good. The sooner this is over, the sooner we can focus on the merger. Investors don't like mess." My chest tightened. A merger. So this wasn't just about love or lust. It was about power, money, status. Melissa wasn't just replacing me in Daniel's bed. She was positioning herself beside him in business too. And Daniel, my husband of 12 years, was helping her destroy me piece by piece because it was more convenient for him. I closed the window before they saw me. My hands shook, but not from fear this time, from fury. Because now I knew the truth. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a takeover. And if I didn't fight back, I wouldn't just lose my marriage. I'd lose everything. My home, my daughter, my identity. For the first time, the grief gave way to something sharper, something dangerous. Anger. The next blow came faster than I expected. 3 weeks after the gala, Daniel invited me to what he called a company town hall. He said it was about transparency, about reassuring the employees. His tone was so businesslike, so detached, I almost didn't go. But something inside me whispered, "You need to see this." So I went. The auditorium was packed with hundreds of employees, reporters, investors. Cameras lined the back walls. It was supposed to be about the company's growth. It's asked their upcoming merger. But from the moment I walked in, I knew I had been set up. Because there, at Daniel's side, was Melissa, dressed in sleek navy, a diamond bracelet glinting under the lights, the kind of bracelet I once wore. The whispers started immediately. I could feel them clawing at my back. "Isn't that the wife? She actually came? God, this is awkward." I wanted to leave, but I forced myself to sit in the second row. My daughter deserved to know I hadn't given up. Daniel stepped onto the stage, his voice smooth as ever. "We're here tonight to celebrate not just our company's success, but the people who made it possible. Leadership is about vision and partnership." He extended his hand to Melissa. She joined him on stage, smiling for the cameras. "And I couldn't have asked for a stronger partner than Melissa," he continued. "She has stood by me through the toughest challenges, and I'm proud to say she'll be stepping into a larger role with the company moving forward." Applause thundered, flashbulbs exploded, and I sat there stone still, every clap like a dagger in my chest. He didn't just replace me in private, he replaced me in public, rewriting history so I had never existed. Melissa leaned into the microphone, her voice honeyed. "Daniel has been more than a mentor. He's been an inspiration. Together we'll take this company into a new era." She paused, eyes flicking deliberately toward me, her smile curling like a blade. "And I believe in closing old chapters with grace. Change can be painful, but it's necessary for growth." The crowd murmured approval. Reporters scribbled notes, and me, I couldn't breathe. I was choking on humiliation. When the event ended, I tried to slip out unnoticed, but fate wasn't that kind. As I reached the exit, a reporter shoved a microphone toward me. Cameras surrounded me like vultures. "Mrs. Donovan, how do you feel about Melissa's new role, about your husband moving forward without you?" I froze, blinded by lights, caught like prey in a trap. My throat closed, my heart pounded. I wanted to scream, to tell them the truth, to tear the facade apart. But before I could speak, Melissa appeared beside me, her hand lightly brushing my arm as if we were old friends. "Claire has always been supportive," she told the cameras, her voice syrupy sweet. "We both want what's best for Daniel and the company." The crowd turned to me, waiting for confirmation. Their eyes burned into me. I opened my mouth, nothing came out, and in that silence, the world decided for me. Click. Flash. Click. The headlines the next morning were merciless. "Wife endorses husband's new partner. Grace in defeat." Grace. Defeat. As if I had chosen this. As if I had bowed out willingly. I slammed the newspaper onto the counter, my hands shaking with fury. "They're rewriting my life," I whispered to myself. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, one message. I was there. "You don't have to let them control the story. Check your email." Confused, I opened my laptop. There it was, in my inbox. An email with attachments, photos, video clips. Melissa in the wings before the event, whispering to a reporter. Handing him an envelope, smiling. She had orchestrated the entire moment, the ambush, the cameras, the headlines. It wasn't spontaneous humiliation. It was planned. My pulse quickened. Who sent this? The email had no signature, no clue. But one detail stood out. The subject line read only 2 words. "Not over." I stared at the screen, my breath shallow. For the first time since the gala, I felt something other than despair. Hope. Because now I had proof. After the town hall disaster, I disappeared. I stopped answering calls. I avoided neighbors. I even skipped my daughter's parent-teacher conference because I couldn't bear the stares. The world wasn't just laughing at me. It was erasing me. Nights blurred into mornings without sleep. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, my chest so heavy it felt like someone was pressing a weight against it. The email, the proof of Melissa's setup, it should have given me strength. Instead, it reminded me of how powerless I was. Even if I had evidence, who would believe me? Daniel was powerful, charming, respected. I was a discarded wife. One evening, I found my daughter crying in her room. She was clutching her phone, her face buried in her pillow. "Sweetheart, what happened?" She showed me the screen. Messages from classmates, memes, pictures of me at the town hall standing mute while Melissa spoke for me. "Mom, they call you pathetic," she sobbed. "They say Dad upgraded. They say you're nothing." My heart broke in ways I didn't think possible. I pulled her into my arms, whispering, "It's not true. None of it is true." But even as I said the words, I wasn't sure I believed them, because deep down, I did feel like nothing. The pressure kept mounting. A week later, Daniel's lawyer called. Calm, polished, ruthless. "Claire, if you drag this out, you'll lose more than time. Judges don't look kindly on mothers who seem unstable. For your daughter's sake, sign the agreement quietly. Daniel is offering you dignity." Dignity. As if being erased was a favor. I hung up before I screamed. But the words sank into me like poison. Unstable. For your daughter's sake, maybe they were right. Maybe my daughter would be better off if I just disappeared from the picture. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, then another. By the third, my hands were trembling. I stood in the bathroom, staring at the reflection I barely recognized. Red eyes, messy hair, skin pale as ash. I opened the medicine cabinet. My fingers brushed a bottle of sleeping pills. The thought whispered, dark and seductive, one handful. You could make it all stop. I stood there, frozen, the bottle heavy in my hand. But then, from the corner of the counter, I saw the folded letter. The one from years ago. The one I had never opened. I don't know why I grabbed it. Maybe because I wanted to see one last piece of myself before I vanished. My hands shook as I tore it open. The words inside nearly knocked the breath out of me. "Claire, if you're reading this, it means you chose him. I won't stop you. But remember, Daniel isn't who he pretends to be. I've seen the numbers, the deals, the falsified accounts. One day, it will come crashing down. And when it does, I hope you remember who warned you." The signature at the bottom, I knew that name. The stranger at the gala. My heart pounded, the pills forgotten in my hand. He hadn't just been part of my past. He had known something about Daniel, something I had ignored, buried because love blinded me. And now, years later, he was back. Sending me proof, watching me fall, waiting for me to rise. I sank to the floor, clutching the letter. For weeks I had believed I was powerless, that I had nothing left. But what if I had something Daniel and Melissa couldn't erase? The truth. The morning after I read the letter, I couldn't stop shaking. Every word replayed in my mind. Fraud, falsified accounts, crashing down. Had I really been sleeping beside a liar all these years? I needed answers, so I replied to the anonymous email. Just 2 words. Meet me. 2 nights later, I found myself sitting in a quiet cafe at the edge of town. Rain streaked the windows, the smell of coffee heavy in the air, and then he walked in. Older now, sharper, but unmistakable. Michael Carter. The man I had once loved before Daniel. The man I had walked away from because Daniel promised me safety. He sat across from me, his eyes steady, unreadable. "You look the same," he said softly, "except tired." I wanted to laugh, but my throat tightened instead. "You sent the email." He nodded. "And the photos. I figured it was time you saw the truth." My hands clenched around my cup. "What truth? That my husband is an adulterer? That part, I already know." Michael leaned forward, voice low. "Claire, this isn't about Melissa. This is about money, power. Daniel has been laundering funds through shell companies tied to the merger. Melissa isn't just his mistress, she's his accomplice." My stomach dropped. No, Daniel. He wouldn't. But the conviction died in my throat. Because hadn't I already seen who he was? A man who discarded me without hesitation. A man who smiled while erasing me. Michael slid a flash drive across the table. Proof. Bank records, email chains, internal memos. He's been covering it up for years. But the merger makes it bigger, riskier. If it goes through, hundreds of employees will lose everything when it collapses. And investors, some of them dangerous, won't forgive him. My fingers trembled as I touched the flash drive. "Why me? Why now?" Michael's gaze softened, just for a moment. "Because you were always the one person Daniel underestimated. He thinks you're broken, weak. He doesn't know what you're capable of." I shook my head. "I don't even know what I'm capable of anymore. He stripped everything from me, the house, the money, even my daughter's peace of mind." Michael's voice cut through my despair. "Claire, do you remember 3 years ago? The night Daniel came home with a stack of papers, said it was just routine company business, and asked you to sign?" I frowned, searching my memory. Yes, I barely read them. I just trusted him. Michael nodded grimly. "That wasn't routine. That was a transfer authorization. He used your name, your signature, to legitimize one of the shell accounts. On paper, you're tied to his fraud." The blood drained from my face. "What?" If this explodes, Michael continued, Daniel walks away clean. You take the fall. My world tilted, spinning out of control. He set me up. Yes. Michael's voice was steady, but that's also why you can bring him down. You have access to files, accounts, things Melissa can't touch. You're not powerless, Claire. You're the key. I stared at him, heart pounding. For weeks I had believed I was nothing but collateral damage. Disposable. Weak. But now I saw the truth. Daniel hadn't just betrayed me as a wife, he had betrayed me as a human being. He had turned me into his shield, his scapegoat, his silent accomplice. The fury that ignited in me was unlike anything I had ever felt. I whispered, he thinks I'll go down quietly. He thinks I'll sign whatever he puts in front of me. Michael leaned closer, his eyes burning into mine. So don't fight. Make him regret underestimating you. When I left the cafe, the rain had stopped. The air smelled like metal, sharp and clean. For the first time since the gala, I didn't feel like prey. I felt like a storm waiting to break. I didn't sleep that night. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop, heart racing as folder after folder appeared. Bank records, emails, signed agreements. Every document was a crack in Daniel's perfect facade. But Michael was right. My name, my signature appeared on one of the accounts. On paper, I wasn't a victim. I was complicit. I pressed my palms to my eyes, trembling. How do I fight him without destroying myself? The next morning, I tested the waters. I forwarded one email, an internal memo linking Daniel to a shell company, to a journalist I used to know from my reporting days. I didn't sign my name. I didn't explain. Just one line, look deeper. For hours I regretted it. My chest was tight, my stomach churned. What if Daniel found out? What if I'd made everything worse? But by evening I saw it. A short online article. Nothing big, just a whisper. Rumors of financial irregularities surrounding Donovan Enterprises. It wasn't much, but it was enough to rattle him. That night, Daniel stormed into the house. His tie was loose, his jaw clenched. Have you seen this? He demanded, slamming the article down on the counter. I glanced at it, forcing my face into blankness. What is it? He studied me, his eyes sharp, suspicious. For a moment I thought he saw through me. Then he cursed under his breath, pacing. It's nothing. Probably some blogger trying to stir trouble. Still, I'll need to tighten security. My heart pounded. Security. Did that mean watching me? As if on cue, the next day, I noticed a black sedan parked down the street. It wasn't subtle. Whoever sat inside wanted me to know I was being watched. Daniel wasn't just suspicious, he was warning me. Fear clawed at me, but alongside it came something else, defiance. He thought intimidation would make me fold. He thought I'd panic, retreat. But I didn't. Instead, I moved more carefully. I started revisiting old boxes in the basement, receipts, tax forms, files Daniel had dismissed as boring. I scanned everything, sending copies to a secure drive. Every piece felt like a brick in the foundation of my defense. And then, while sifting through a stack of company printouts, I found it. An email chain. Between Daniel and Melissa. Except this time, Melissa wasn't just agreeing with him. She was calculating. Manipulative. Her words chilled me. Once the merger finalizes, the accounts will be under joint control. That gives me leverage. Daniel won't see it coming. My pulse quickened. Melissa wasn't just his partner. She was planning to betray him, to cut him out once she secured enough power. For a moment, I almost laughed. Daniel had destroyed me for her, and she was sharpening the knife for him. But the more I thought about it, the more dangerous it became. If Melissa was playing both sides, she wouldn't hesitate to destroy me too. I sat on the basement floor, the email trembling in my hand, my chest pounding. This wasn't just about exposing Daniel anymore. It was about surviving both of them. That night I texted Michael, we need to move faster, because if I hesitated, Daniel would bury me. And if I waited too long, Melissa would bury him, and maybe take me down in the process. The only way forward was through fire. For weeks I had been hiding in shadows, ashamed, broken, erased. But the night I found Melissa's email, something shifted. I stood in front of the mirror, really looking at myself. My hair was unkempt, my eyes tired, my body wrapped in oversized sweaters like armor. This wasn't me. This was the version of me Daniel had reduced to, small, invisible, powerless, and I was done with her. The next day I booked a salon appointment. For hours, stylists cut away years of neglect, coloring, reshaping, transforming. When I walked out, my reflection startled me. Sharp lines, confident edges, eyes no longer dulled by grief. I wasn't the broken wife anymore. I was Claire Donovan, the woman Daniel had forgotten I could be. From there, I moved to the next step. Work. I called an old editor, explained I wanted to freelance again. At first, she hesitated. "Claire, it's been years. Journalism has changed." "So have I," replied. And within a week, I had my first assignment. Small, local, but mine. A byline under my name. Proof I still existed outside of Daniel's shadow. Michael noticed the change immediately when we met again. "You look dangerous," he said with a half smile. "I intend to be," I answered. He slid a folder across the table. "Then you're ready. The feds have been watching Daniel's company for months, but they don't have enough to move. What they need is a witness, someone from the inside." My pulse quickened. "You mean me?" Michael nodded. "Your name is on those documents. That makes you both a target and a key. If you cooperate, you're protected. And if you play it right, Daniel and Melissa go down. Hard." I gripped the folder, my nails digging into the cardboard. Protected. You think the FBI can protect my daughter from the humiliation? From the whispers? From the betrayal? Michael leaned closer, voice steady. "Claire, the only thing worse than humiliation is silence. Do nothing, and Daniel wins. Melissa wins. You lose everything. But if you fight, if you step into the light, you write the ending, not them." That night, I pulled out the folder. Inside were surveillance photos, financial charts, call transcripts. Each page was a reminder that Daniel wasn't untouchable. For the first time, I saw not just a man who betrayed me, but a criminal. And I realized this wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. I started training myself quietly. Early morning runs, cutting back the wine, writing again, sharpening my mind. Even my daughter noticed. One night she looked at me and said, "Mom, you seem different, stronger." I hugged her tightly, whispering, because I remembered who I am. 2 weeks later, I attended a charity gala, alone, the same kind of place where I had once been humiliated. Except this time I wasn't trembling. Whispers followed me as I entered. The discarded wife, the tragic figure. But when I walked through the crowd, head high, dress sharp, eyes steady, they didn't see a victim. They saw someone untouchable. Even Daniel froze when he spotted me. For the first time since the scandal, he was the one staring, uncertain, off balance. And in that moment, I knew. The game had shifted. The final stage came faster than I expected. Daniel announced a shareholder conference to celebrate the merger's completion. Cameras were invited, reporters lined up, investors filled the hall. It was meant to be his crowning moment, his proof to the world that nothing could touch him. But I knew better. I had spent weeks with Michael and the agents, preparing every document, every recording, every detail. And tonight, the world would see Daniel as he truly was. I walked into the hall in silence, ignoring the whispers. I wasn't here as a wife or an ex-wife. I was here as the witness. Daniel stood on stage, Melissa at his side, their smiles perfect, their confidence unshakable. "Tonight," Daniel declared, "we celebrate the beginning of a new era. This merger is the future, not just for our company, but for every investor who believed in us." Applause erupted, cameras flashed, and then my voice cut through the noise. "Funny," I said, stepping forward. "I thought the future was supposed to be built on truth." Gasps rippled across the room. Daniel's smile faltered. "Claire," he said tightly, "this isn't the place." But I didn't stop. I climbed the steps to the stage, my heels clicking like a countdown. "No, Daniel, this is exactly the place. Because for years you've built this empire on lies, and tonight, everyone will finally see." I raised a hand, and on cue, the projector screen behind us flickered. Emails, bank transfers, documents, each stamped with Daniel's signature, Melissa's approval, and mine, forged into a web I had never agreed to. The room erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted, investors gasped, shareholders surged forward. Melissa's face drained of color. Daniel turned to her, furious. "You said this was handled." But before she could answer, the screen changed again. An audio file this time. Melissa's voice clear as glass. "Once the merger finalizes, the accounts will be under joint control. That gives me leverage. Daniel won't see it coming." The audience roared. Cameras zoomed in. Daniel's jaw clenched, betrayal flashing in his eyes. For the first time, I saw fear in him. Then the agent stepped in. Badges raised, voices firm. "Daniel Donovan, Melissa Carter, you are under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering." The hall exploded with flashes as both of them were handcuffed. Daniel shouted, struggling, his mask finally shattered. Melissa screamed his name, blaming him, clawing at her captors. And me? I stood still, watching as the empire that had crushed me collapsed in front of everyone. The humiliation he had forced on me at the gala, at the town hall, in my own home. This was my answer. Justice. Outside the building, the night air was cool against my skin. Reporters swarmed, shouting questions, shoving microphones. Mrs. Donovan, did you know? How long has this been going on? Were you complicit? I met their eyes, calm, steady. I was deceived, like all of you, I said, but I chose not to stay silent. Tonight, the truth won. The cameras flashed, but this time, I didn't flinch, because I wasn't their victim anymore. I was their headline. Later at home, I found my daughter waiting on the porch. She threw her arms around me, tears streaming. Mom, everyone at school knows, but they're saying you're a hero. I held her tight, my throat thick with emotion. I'm not a hero, sweetheart. I just remembered I didn't deserve to be erased. She pulled back, smiling through her tears. You're stronger than anyone I know. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. Weeks passed. The merger collapsed. The company faced restructuring, and both Daniel and Melissa faced years in prison. As for me, I started over. Not as someone's wife, not as someone's shadow, but as myself. My articles gained traction, my voice carried weight again. And slowly, piece by piece, the woman I had lost returned. One evening, as the sun dipped low, I opened my laptop to write. My daughter was in the next room, laughing with friends. The house was quiet, peaceful, and in that silence I whispered to myself, he thought he had destroyed me, but all he did was set me free. 6 months later, the house finally felt like home again. The echoes of shouting, the weight of humiliation, the shadows of betrayal, gone. Replaced by laughter in the kitchen, the smell of Sunday pancakes, the quiet peace of evenings with books and soft music. My daughter had blossomed. She no longer walked with her head down at school. She spoke with confidence, her eyes bright when she introduced me at school events. This is my mom. The pride in her voice was the greatest victory of all. As for me, I wasn't the same woman I had been before the gala. I had scars, yes, but I also had strength I never knew lived inside me. My articles were being published regularly now, even picked up by national outlets. For the first time in years, I wasn't living in someone else's shadow. I was living in my own light. One evening, Michael stopped by. He didn't stay long, just dropped off a book he thought I'd like, a biography of a fearless female journalist. He lingered at the door, eyes searching mine. You don't owe me anything, he said softly. But if you ever want someone beside you, I'm here. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I smiled, a quiet smile filled with something new, possibility. Because I wasn't rushing anymore. I wasn't desperate for safety or validation. For the first time, I was enough for myself. And that was freedom. Later that night, I sat at my desk, typing the last line of a new article. My daughter's laughter drifted from the next room, warm and sweet. I paused, staring at the blinking cursor, and whispered to myself. I thought I had lost everything. But what I really lost was the version of me who believed I couldn't survive without him. And now that she's gone, I've never been more alive. The cursor stopped blinking. The page was full, and so was I.